Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming tonight to the Beach Haven Birkdale Residents Association Meet the Candidates meeting. I've just turned the heaters off on that side of the wall. Those ones are on. If it gets too hot, just let me know. I can just turn them off. They're operated from the kitchen area. Now, the fire exit is where you came in. If you need to use the toilets, they're up the front here. Calvin, thank you for coming. Like Calvin can only stay till 8 because he's got to shoot off because he's got to do a bit more travelling. So thank you for making it tonight, Calvin. So just a quick format of the meeting tonight. Each candidate will be given 5 minutes as the introduction speech. We've got the timekeeper Barry with me. So he'll, at 30 seconds to go, he'll give the bell, and then we'll give the signal when the 5 minutes is also up. I'll draw the names in of the candidates in the order of speaking, and then after that we will then have I've got some questions here that we'll be asking the candidates. Each of them will be given a turn to answer those questions, and we'll rotate who starts and who finishes the question time. I've got a bit of a block there today, so excuse me. So again, it's great to see you all here tonight. Thank you for being here. I was here last night at another candidates meeting. Most of the people here today, they had the Pacific Forum one, so and I've noticed some familiar faces from there. So good to see you all again. So welcome to our meeting, and without further ado, I'll just go through the order of the speaking order. So, okay, first we're going to have Dan. So Dan, you come up, and then so it's from the lectern they'll be speaking, and then the question time you'll remain seated.
Can we go mic? Can we bring the mic over, or?
Just do it from the lectern first, and then the question time you can.
Well, kia ora and good evening, everybody. Can you hear me at the back there? Great, excellent. Hey, good evening, everybody. Great to be here with you today. I'd just like to start out by saying a big thank you to the team at the Beach Haven Birkdale Residents Association for what you do in our community. Stephen, Bobby, Duncan, Kate, Joe, Doug, is it Barry? Yes, and anybody else I may have left out. Can we give them a round of applause, everybody? Thank you for what you do for our community and for this space. They maintain this space, which is so crucial for our community. And my commitment to you, I've really enjoyed the last few years of coming to your meetings. And my commitment to you is that I will continue to do so as your local Member of Parliament to make sure I'm listening to you and our community's concerns. So who am I? Dan's my name. I'm Nationals candidate for this great electorate of Northcote. And I'd love your 2 ticks for National in this election. Who am I? I'm a husband. I'm a father to our dog Milo. I'm a qualified butcher. I'm also a high school dropout, a Harvard-educated economist. I've worked in Paris. I've worked all around the world in Malaysia. I've worked in business. I've also ran my own small business, and I was the former Member of Parliament for this great community up until 2020. I'm also a proud Warriors fan, so I'm a bit disappointed with the season, but really proud of the season they had, up the Wars. So why am I standing here before you today? I'm standing because our community and our country faces some really serious challenges. Challenges around crime, which is actually the number 1 issue for the Beach Haven and Birkdale community. Challenges around the cost of living and the economy. Challenges around infrastructure. Challenges around our declining education system. Challenges around a healthcare system that is at breaking point and has been at breaking point for decades. And I think we need some serious skills and experience in our Parliament to be able to get us through these types of challenges, to make sure our community and our country flourish. National's platform is simple. First, we will restore law and order. We will take a tougher approach to those that break the law and bring back consequences for those that break the law. We will, thank you, we will crack down on gangs and deal with serious repeat youth offenders. The second thing we will do is ease cost of living pressures by offering serious tax relief to those of what we call the squeezed middle. And I'd encourage you to go and look on our website, tax calculator website, to find out how much you might be getting back as a result. We're going to offer serious economic management because under this government, spending has ballooned by $64 billion since 2017. And it's that spending that has led to increased inflation and led to the environment that we are now faced with. So we will cut spending down in Wellington and cut projects that are actually no use to our community here on the North Shore. We wouldn't have spent $51 million on a cycleway to nowhere across the Harbour Bridge. These are the sorts of things that's your money that we will not deal with if we're in government. The third is around health and education. Both areas are in serious need of attention, and we absolutely commit to improving outcomes in both health and education in our system in New Zealand, and particularly in the North Shore here, where wait times are through the roof since 2018. And finally is our platform around infrastructure. We don't do a good job of actually building stuff in this country. We're big on promises, but actually very light on delivery. And that's actually fair right across the political spectrum as well. So we're going to actually get stuff done. We're going to deliver the second harbour crossing. We're going to fix up our roads, make sure that our country can move forward once again. So I'm Dan Bidwell. I'd love your tick for me and also for the National Party to represent you in the next National-led government. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Next we have Michelle Warren.
Good evening, I'm Dr. Michelle Warren, and I'm the Northcote candidate for New Zealand First. I've lived in Northcote for 26 years with my family, and my daughters went to Northcote College. I worked in West Auckland as a GP part-time over 20 years, and now I work as a high school tutor with some students here in Beachhaven and in Birkdale. I entered into politics this year because I was concerned about where we are headed as a nation. After COVID management, including 6 months of lockdowns for Auckland, MIQ, vaccine mandates and vaccine passes, all representing profound state control over the individual freedom and choice of New Zealanders, then came He Pūpua, a break, a written desire to divide governance between Māori and non-Māori. Where did this drive come from? Back in 2007, the UN wrote the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. In power at the time, Labour and New Zealand First said no to signing this document. Helen Clark and Winston Peters both agreeing that this perspective of separate Indigenous rights did not fit our reality here in New Zealand. But then in 2010, our national government signed the Declaration. Our new Labour government began to pursue an outworking. He Pūpua was written and co-governance emerged. Following their majority 2020 win, Labour began to implement their undeclared plan for co-governance, including the requirement of local councils to engage in co-governance arrangements over water. They also created a separate Māori Health Authority, beginning the implementation of different pathways for health for Māori. Okay, so spotting the Labour supporters here and the ones who are not clapping behind. Good. Okay. In this way, our nation began to be divided between Māori and non-Māori. As a Pākehā doctor with a passion for Māori and for Māori health, working in West Auckland and with Pākehā and adopted Māori family, I found this process gut-wrenching and I stepped out. I believe in equality and in an equal democracy. Why is this important? An equal vote safeguards our nation from separatism, from ethnic elitism, no matter what the ethnicity, and from the formation of oligarchies of power with no accountability structures around them, allowing leaders to implement whatever they wish. New Zealand First says no to co-governance. We believe in democracy, in the innate equality of all ethnicities, and the equal right of all New Zealanders to have equal power over our collective fate as a nation with our vote. As David Longy said, you can't have co-governance and democracy. It's either one or the other. All leaders with power over our citizens must be accountable to a vote. As a consequence, New Zealand First will not work with any party endorsing co-governance. We will not form a government with Labour, and we will seek to pull out of the UN Declaration. As a nation, we now face a number of challenges, as Dan has shared. The cost of living crisis has hit many of us hard, with inflation at 6% over the last year up to June this year. Health is in crisis, with burning out doctors and too long a wait for surgery or for GP appointments. Education is in crisis, with only 60% of our students regularly attending school. Crime is out of control, with ramwaits continuing, and retail crime costing $1 billion per year. To rebuild New Zealand as a prosperous nation, New Zealand First will seek to invest in the productivity of our businesses by providing incentives for added value, such as reduced tax. At the same time, New Zealand First wants to support our workers by seeking to provide higher wages and adjusted tax brackets with inflation. In health, New Zealand First will seek to re-establish a single health system based on the equal needs of patients and not based on ethnicity. We'll reprioritise government expenditure, removing wasted and ideologically motivated investments and redirecting those into the real and equal needs of all New Zealanders. In education, we're committed to removing gender ideology from our schools, and we will seek to enforce compulsory education. Why choose New Zealand First? We will fight to stabilise and restore our democracy, saying no to co-governance. We will seek to cultivate our economy and lift up health and education. We will say no to crime and fight to protect our seniors. Give your party vote to New Zealand First.
Thank you, Michelle. And next, Calvin Davis.
Tēnā rā tātou katoa. So my name is Calvin Davis. I'm the current MP for Te Tai Tokerau, which is the Māori electorate that runs from basically the Henderson Mall food court right up to Cape Reinga and across to the Harbour Bridge and up to Cape Reinga. And I do have to apologise for leaving at 8 o'clock because at 5 a.m. tomorrow I need to be an hour north of Kaitaia at a housing development opening up there. Can I just have a show of hands to see who is actually registered on the Tai Tokerau roll? Yeah. All right. Maybe we should just head off to the pub and have a beer and talk about things there. So as the current MP for Tai Tokerau, I'm the Minister for Māori Crown Relations, and I'd like to talk a bit about what was just said then. Minister for Corrections, Minister for Children, and the Associate Minister of Education responsible for Māori education. Now, my great-great-great-great-grandfather, Whetoi Pomare, signed Te Treaty of Waitangi in 1840, and I bet you when he signed it, he was hoping that things would work out a bit better than they have for Māori. See, as a Māori, I'm probably destined to die 7 years earlier than non-Māori. My father's oldest brother died at the age of 57. Another brother died at 63 and another died at 66. I'm 56 now, so I'm entering that zone where my father's brothers all passed away. I don't think that's very fair. And when we talk about things such as the Māori Health Authority, it's not about having separate hospitals or separate doctor surgeries for anybody. It's just about Māori actually having a say about Māori health issues. So basically, being able to have a say about things that affect their own health. New Zealand is more divided than ever before, but it's not a division of race, it's a division of ignorance. I'd say that the people who are most talking about co-governance do not have the faintest idea about Te Tiriti o Waitangi. Sir, you disagreed with me. How many articles in Te Tiriti o Waitangi? Yeah, see, so somebody there who's disagreeing with me doesn't even know Treaty 101 stuff. So the Article 1, which covers kāwanatanga or is governance, basically guarantees the right for a government to be established, which is based on the one person, one vote thing. So don't give me this that Māori have 2 votes or something and everyone else has 1 vote. That's just the nonsense. The second article is about rangatiratanga, which guaranteed Māori the right and say over their assets and resources, and that just simply hasn't happened. Article 3 gives Māori the right, all the rights of British subjects, which Māori say is a guarantee of equity. And if we die 7 years before everyone else, that certainly is not equity. Basically, if Te Tiriti o Waitangi had been honoured from the outset, we wouldn't be in the situation we are in now. So it would be really good if those people who disagree with me could actually stand up and tell us how much they know about Te Tiriti o Waitangi, about the 3 articles, Article 1 of kāwanatanga, Article 2, rangatiratanga, Article 3 about equity. You see, as the Minister of Corrections, 53% of people in prison are Māori, even though we make up about 17% of the population. I don't think my tūpuna signed the treaty for that to happen, for his descendants to be the most incarcerated people in New Zealand. As Minister for Children, 67% of children in the care of Oranga Tamariki are Māori. I don't think my tūpuna signed the Treaty of Waitangi for that to happen. So what we need in New Zealand is for equity to occur. So just imagine for a second now, there's a river running through Aotearoa. On one bank of the river is the Māori world, where we speak our language, we know our customs, and we act and behave the way we do. And the other side is the non-Māori world, where all other ethnicities speak their languages and customs, and in particular the English language and English customs are predominant. What connects those 2 worlds is a bridge called Te Tiriti o Waitangi. Who's crossed that bridge from one world to the other the most? It's almost exclusively been Māori crossing into the Pākehā world or non-Māori world, learning the language and customs. Very rarely have other people crossed from the non-Māori world into the Māori world and learnt our language and customs. That's why I say there's not a racial divide, there's an ignorance divide. Kia ora.
Thank you, Calvin. Next, Leo Foley.
Well, good evening, everyone. My name's Leo Foley, and I'm the Northcote candidate for ACT. Now, I heard through the grapevine that these meetings can get quite lively, so I'm all in support of democracy. Don't get me wrong. I love it when people are passionate and they actually show up in force, but let's be considerate. Let's actually sort of realise that every single person up on the stage is just like you. We're humans. So I'd just like to actually, thank you, I'd just like to actually let you all know that perhaps a bit of kindness and compassion can be shown tonight. So I don't mind the odd heckling. Go to it if you feel that way, but just be respectful a little bit. So I'd like to say thank you to the association for inviting us along. I think it was beautiful hearing Calvin actually sort of talk about how he taitukuls back to the far north in his tūpuna. I'd like to actually sort of talk you through a little bit of a story myself. I too can taitukul back to a treaty signatory, and his name is Moko Te Wa'o Paihangi. Now, he was an influential Ngāpuhi chief in the far north. In fact, I can go one step further. His brother, Rewi, ended up being the principal chief for all Ngāpuhi. But it doesn't stop there. It's documented. It is a big call, but you can actually have a look through parliamentary records. You live down there, my friend. So,
No, I live in Kaitaia.
well, Kaitaia's, yeah, okay, all right. So, just moving on from that, it's a little bit sort of disheartening that you get sort of people on the podium actually sort of questioning other people actually who have the mic. You know, I didn't do it to him. And I'm a fresh face to politics. This is the first time that I put my hand in the kitty. So let me just actually sort of continue on. We also, in my family, this is just on my mother's side, we have another branch that swings off to Te Rarawa. My great-great-great-grandfather, Wiremu Rikihana, was actually appointed to the upper house in Wellington in 1923. Now, he was in office for 7 years. He resigned due to poor health, but I can tell you this. His role while he was down there in Wellington was to make sure that any legislation, or taking that back, any bills that were coming from the lower house into the upper house were vetted and they were actually sort of dealt with. They were meant to be sort of respective of every single New Zealander. So, you may actually ask yourself, why am I bringing up those 2 points? And I'll tell you why. Under this government, and under every successive government before them, they've used urgency in the House to push their legislation through. They've used the urgency to put their agenda into the wider society. Now, I don't know about you, but last time I looked, democracy to me represented transparency and accountability. Now, I don't know how many people, just a show of hands, how many people actually sort of believe in that? Good to hear. So that brings me to the next part of what I want to say, and that is, like all of you, I feel that this country is going down the wrong path. There's a lot going wrong in the country at the moment. Everything from crime, a failing education and health system, co-governance. You know, and I talk about co-governance, and I feel quite passionate about co-governance because had the agenda been put in front of the wider public and discussed in an open fashion, then maybe we could have all palleted that. But it seems that this government wants to rewrite history. It's not about the treaty, it's about what they think is best for you and I. And I think that that's wrong. I don't stand up for that, and I don't support that. So I just want to talk briefly about crime. Hopefully when we get to the substantive part of this discussion, we can actually answer a lot more questions. But for those of you that live in the Northcote Electorate, crime is actually sort of on the rise. We've had 3 murders here in the last year. We had one in Northcote Point, we had one in Beach Haven, and then we had one in Hillcrest. Mind you, that was in 2022. But I'm still looking at the frequency of these sorts of crimes. White-collar crime's a different story, my dear. 30 seconds. So all I'd actually say to you is this discussion is about openness. It's about transparency. So if you want a government that's going to manage this country into a good position, then you need to party vote act. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Leo. Next, Mark Donaldson.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Mark Donaldson. Wonderful to be here. Thank you for the invite. And I was actually born and raised in Zimbabwe. Many years ago, we come over in 2001 after the country was sort of brinkering on civil war with the crime and the economy crashing, and it was pretty crazy. And we came to this beautiful country, and it's been a wonderful privilege to be here. Amazing, wonderful country. And unfortunately, over the last few years, I don't believe this is the same country that I grew up in over the last 20-something years. And I'm married to a beautiful, gorgeous wife for the last 10 years. Her name's Nicole. We have 3 beautiful children, a 6-year-old girl, Madison Grace, and a 3-year-old son, Micaiah, and a 7-month-old girl, Miami. And she's beautiful and amazing. And when I came over here, I really struggled with the transition of coming to a new country and all the probably the trauma of things that happened in Zimbabwe, and coming here was really difficult. I struggled to fit in. I struggled at the schools, and I found myself in a place of depression and suicide, and it was really just my parents' upbringing that sort of kept me away from, sort of crossing that line. But it was a very difficult time, and there was a man who actually helped me come through that, and it really after that sparked me to try to get into that space. So for the last 18, 20 years, I've been more so in youth services, social services. I work with young people that are depressed, suicidal, those that offend. I've got a team of 10. We look after up to 120 young people a year. Those that do ram raids, crime, all sorts of car crime, theft, all sorts of things that are going on. And it's been a real privilege to do that. And I love that mahi. And for the last 6 years here in this great community and across the shore, my wife and I have been running the very successful Man Up and Legacy program. We've got a wonderful team. We're not funded. In fact, our team itself, we've put 150,000 of our own money into this community to help and turn around hundreds of lives, families. The last couple of years in particular, I've been working in the rehabs and the bail houses, supporting those who are on the way to prison or on the way out of prison, and helping them to open up and to talk and be real, because we believe very much so in Vision New Zealand, a lot of the problems that we're facing right now, we have unfortunately some of the worst stats in the world when it comes to family violence, family harm, divorce, fatherlessness, depression, suicide, mental health issues. We've got some real problems, and we believe a lot of the issues that we're facing, whether it's crime or anything else, really comes back to the home. And we've got a real problem in the home, and we've got to strengthen the home. And even when we look at, and we're talking about the crime that's happening in this community, which it is, and across the country it really has escalated, and a lot of that comes back even to the lockdowns. Because when I'm in the rehabs, these men are telling me meth use doubled during lockdown, family harm went through the roof, 70% of police call-outs was for family harm. And then you track back to see what's happening with our young people. 85% of young people that offend have been exposed to 2 or 3 incidents of family harm. Those that move on into car crime and the ram raids, 100% have been exposed to family harm. So we've got a real problem in our home, and we cannot solve that problem by talking about everything else and putting plasters on it. We've got to get to the root cause of turning around, helping our men to heal, to be restored, to be empowered, to have great policies around our family, because we want to be generationally minded to make sure that we can break cycles of poverty, cycles of family harm, cycles of abuse, cycles of gang activity and criminal activity and everything else. And so we have some great policies around our law and order. We believe our Man Up and Legacy, very successful program, does and works and does amazing work there. And some of the things that we're very concerned about, I am as well as a father to my daughters, is the sexualization of our kids in school. Absolutely horrified by some of the doctrine, the indoctrination in the schools. I had a man come to me the other day. He was horrified, talking about his 8-year-old, and that a principal here in this electorate was teaching him about ejaculation at 8 years old. You've got to be joking. I'm not sure if you're aware and if you know what is being taught in our schools right now. It is unbelievable. It is not safe. It's not okay. We've got to protect our kids. We've got to protect our kids. We've got to protect our kids. We've got to support them, affirm them. And the other thing that we'll roll back is the most extreme abortion law in the world we have right here. I don't know if you're aware, but 9 months, up to 9 months, a baby that is almost due to be born can be terminated. It's murder. It's not right. It is absolutely not right. And we will put policies, we'll repeal that bill that was sent through under COVID, and it's absolutely foul bill. It's an extreme bill. And do you know in that abortion law that if that baby is born, there is a law in there that says that they do not have to medically assist the baby that survives an abortion? It's shocking. We've got a dark underbelly in this comment, and we will help. So Mark Donaldson, Vision New Zealand, Party Vote Freedoms New Zealand. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Next, Shannon.
Ai ngā mana i ngā reo raurangatira mā tēnā koutou, mauri ore kia tātou katoa. Talofa lava, malo e lele, whakalofa lahi atu, everyone. It's great to be here in the heart of the Northcote Electorate in Beach Haven, a community that I've been a part of and a community that I'm incredibly proud of. People that are here tonight, you've got a big challenge on your hands over the coming 2 weeks. You're thinking about who represents you best. The measure of an effective local MP is a local MP that gets things done. Somebody that gets things done for this community. And what we've heard across this election is lots of talk about crime, the cost of living, but actually no tangible solutions to achieve outcomes for this community. And certainly no resources that come with it. And as your local MP over the past 3 years, I've been incredibly proud of the work that we've done. My father once told me that leadership is service. And the whakatauki that I think of at the moment is that we have come too far not to go further. We have done too much not to do more. And when I think about this community, and I particularly think about Beach Haven and Birkdale, a community I'm proud of, but certainly a community that has some challenges in front of it and has for a long time. But in my role as your local MP, my track record speaks for itself. I think about the 1,700 houses plus that we've delivering across this electorate. Warm, dry public homes, homes for first home buyers, because I'm in this election, because I'm in it for first home buyers. I'm not in it for foreign buyers. One of the things... Secondly, I'm so proud of the work that we've done in our local schools. I talk up our local public schools. We have a wonderful public education system that under this government we have invested in. We've built dozens of classrooms, and year on year we've invested $20 million across public schools in this electorate. That is more than this electorate has seen in decades. Across the way at North Shore Hospital, we're building 150 new hospital beds and 4 surgical units for this particular local community. Those are deliverable outcomes that have been on the watch under this government and the time that I have served as your local MP. When I think about children and young people, I made a commitment to ensuring that every child in this community, every young person does well, that they have the same opportunity in front of them that I did to get a good education, to have a good life, a good job, and to demonstrate leadership. When I think about this community, I want families to do well, and when we talk about the cost of living, actually, the cost of living is going to be resolved by bringing down inflation. Yes, it will be. And that is coming down. But actually, for working families, for those on the minimum wage, for beneficiaries, we've got to lift wages. We've started that, and I'm proud that under the budgets that I've voted for in my time, we've lifted the minimum wage each year over the past 6 years under this government. That's $7 more an hour for a minimum wage earner, and $200 more going into families like those here in Beach Haven. And when we think about congestion and the transport challenges that we have here, I've at first hand worked closely to bring forward the additional harbour connection, to put out scenarios to this community, ask for feedback, and come up with a final plan for us to push forward with the Minister of Transport and to start construction in 2029. That's from a national government plan that had that scheduled to start in 2040. So measure me on what I've done for this community. I'm proud that I've worked hard over the next 3 years, and by jingoes, I want to do more. I believe that together we've built the foundations to face the challenges that are in front of our community, but we have to do that together. And that's going to take leadership, not big talk. It's going to take action, and we're doing that together.
Thank you, Barry. In the past, we used to have a wee bell, but so now we're going to come to question time. We have prepared some questions, and like I said, the candidates can remain seated, and we'll basically start. I'll open up for a question, and each candidate will get to answer the question. They'll be given 2 minutes of a 30-second Barry warning, and then so we'll start from this end, Shannon, and then we'll move along, and then when the second question comes, we'll start with Calvin, so not everyone's going first. So, okay then. First question. Alcohol harm in our country costs around $8 billion a year. There was a law change to the government giving communities more say on liquor sales and supply in your backyards. In just this current year, we had a liquor chain who wanted to open a bottle store in Beachhaven. We went against it, and there was, I think it was about 300 people against it. And pleased to hear that they pulled out. They felt the community, was against it, and they made a wise choice because the other bottle store was only about 40 metres away. So, but the main concern is alcohol in the community. So I just wanted to ask each candidate to address their thoughts on all the bottle stores, their opening hours, etc. Thank you. 2 minutes.
Thank you. Very good question. I was a part of the public meetings that we held here. I worked with the Kaipātiki local boards to take action to stop super liquor from opening up across the road. We mobilised our community together and we got the outcome that we wanted. We want to stop alcohol sales in vulnerable communities like this. That's what we did, because we need to take a responsible approach to ensure, particularly for those most vulnerable and our young people, aren't accessing the substances that they don't need. We need them focused on the things that they have to. But that's my whole philosophy when I look at our local community and the development of our community. Addressing alcohol harm is one thing, but we've got to build up families, we've got to build strong families together, and we've got to invest in those families and ensure that they've got the resources available. One thing that I've also been proud of is the investment in our Māori and Pacific community, particularly here in Beachhaven. We've got to ensure that everyone does well. Alcohol harm is a particular issue, but we've got to focus on getting the resources that we need to address the community issues that we collectively face. We've got to be brave about them, and we've got to demonstrate leadership.
Kia ora. Well, I believe that communities need to have the say in what happens within their communities, but we've also got to address the harm that alcohol does cause. Most people in this room probably don't mind having a drop or two. One of the reasons that it is difficult to address alcohol-related issues is because there's a lot of people who like their wine after, in the evening. So it's very hard to get real meaningful change, and it is a conscience vote in Parliament. But I think the most important thing is really that communities need to be able to have a say in what's going on, whether it's alcohol, whether it's vape stores, whatever it is. Communities need to have the say.
Look, I actually agree with pretty much everything that's been said. Local communities make local decisions for their areas. So I think actually it's somewhere where we've got a lot of alignment. I'll just tell you, I've lived overseas for 7 years, and I do think we've got a culture issue in this country. I've lived in France where they actually, the attitude to alcoholism is a lot different. If you can see it in the stats, the alcohol consumption per capita in New Zealand is way higher than most other developed countries in the world. We're also very high on binge drinking. So in my view, and I believe in National's view, is that we actually do need to do things around culture shift and actually helping to model good behaviour. And that to me is around actually in the family. When your kids grow up, actually teach them how to respect alcohol, not to abuse it. It all starts in the family level, and I think that we can all make a difference in our own communities to help shift the attitude to alcohol in this country. Thank you.
Yeah, at a personal level, alcohol is definitely a big deal in our society. I say that as an individual and as a GP. We don't have a New Zealand First 2023 policy specifically on alcohol, but I certainly agree with what Dan's saying about family and culture and needing to shift things in a better direction in terms of a more moderate, kind of self-controlled handling of alcohol. If we were thinking as a nation that we wanted to actually change our approach from a legal point of view, then New Zealand First would endorse a referendum to do that. Thank you.
Okay, I'm not going to sit here or stand here and lecture you about the damage that alcohol causes in our communities. Dan hit it on the head. Binge culture is ripe in our country. ACT supports Te Ao Rere Kura. We actually sort of believe in standing and actually supporting families. But the big difference between us and this government is that we like to have measurements, audits, accountability and results in front of us. We need to actually sort of drill down and actually sort of find the social providers that are actually doing the work and make sure that we support them. But at the same time, we need to actually sort of come down a little harder on the perpetrators. These are people that are causing harm in their families, causing harm to their children. Everything has a flow-on effect. So, I'm not going to stand here and actually sort of go on more and more about it. We also look at the Commission for Mental Health and Welfare. We're going to overhaul that system. We're going to actually sort of direct people to where they need to find those services. Under this government, people are left sort of dangling. They're actually sort of struggling. And that's not what I believe in. So, party vote ACT.
Probably in my time, running Men Up with hundreds of men over the years, many of them being alcoholics, many of them drugs and everything else, but a large percentage have been alcoholics. And most of the time when we do Man Up, it really is about asking questions that you're not normally going to talk about in your coffee chat. How many have been sexually abused? How many had a dad that ran away? How many had a dad that was abusive? How many got bullied at school? Most of the time, in my experience with the thousands of men I've worked with now, and my wife will say the same with the ladies and all our team would say, most of the time the heavy drinking is trying to deal with the pain that is unresolved or unhealed and trying to numb that pain. And so I think we have to continue to find successful programs like I believe in Man Up a Legacy, but there's other amazing programs and a culture of helping our men particularly to open up. Because in the past it was shut up, be quiet, you don't have to sit over there. But many, and you'll know probably in your experience, the men coming out of the war, straight to the drink, trying to deal with the trauma from war, and that's carried on generationally. We absolutely would certainly want less bottle stores happening, but we've got to go deeper to that part, is going to starting with the men. Because I once sat in a room with 16 of these guys, and I said, tell us about your relationship with your dad. One had a dad, a good dad. 12 of them had run away. 4 of them had committed suicide. So how on earth, nobody to teach them, nobody to help them to overcome, and then they're dealing with all the pain and that trauma, that's where all the drinking comes from. So absolutely support our men and our families to heal where they need to. Thank you.
Thank you, team. Next question is, we've got a group of yous who rent out our office in the hall, Francis Waka, and they're looking at putting a marae in Beachhaven, and they've been working on it for about 7 years, and they're progressing quite well, but they come up, like most landowners, they come up with a lot of red tape from the council, what they need to, and these extra costs they need to do. So I'm just asking each party how we can help speed up these processes in councils around development and etc. So we'll start with you, Calvin.
Okay, so the RMA has a lot to do with that, and we have just passed new legislation to replace the RMA. That's intended to speed up these processes. I know that it's very difficult here on the shore because a lot of people just object to having a marae in their vicinity, and that's very sad. And marae will actually just enhance the whole community. They are places for the whole community where anybody can have their birthdays and weddings and various gatherings as long as they respect the tikanga of the marae. So I think that the marae itself will be a huge asset for this community.
Well, the RMA reforms that this government have been focused on have really become a bit of a dog's bollocks, if I'm honest. So National will scrap their plans and actually revisit and streamline the RMA once and for all so that we can actually get on and build stuff and get stuff done in this country. Because it does sadly take far too long to get stuff built in this country. But just to address the marae, because while I'm supportive of the second marae, I'm actually questioning, we've got a great marae in this community. It's called Awataha. And many of you would be aware that I've spent a significant amount of time trying to actually get that opened up for the community so that that delivers. Well, no, I have spent a lot of time, and unfortunately it's controlled by a group of people that aren't supportive of the community. And I'm sorry, but that's incorrect. But I'm very, very supportive of actually finding ways to unlock the existing marae that we have, not just about building the additional one, which is actually a huge amount of cost. We've got a great marae. Let's figure out how to make that work for the community.
I will. Look, shh, hush, turi turi. I don't want to be here all night, right? Neither do you guys. So just sit down there like little sheep that we all are, listen to these people here, and then, come the 14th of October, you can have your save in. But just sit there, shut up, and listen to these people. It's only for 2 minutes. Thank you very much.
Being centrist with New Zealand First, I'm staying out of this one.
Come on, Michelle, you've got to throw your head in the ring. Listen, Dan hit it on the head. There's too much red tape. I studied resource management law when I was at university. I'm a practicing lawyer. And there is far too much red tape. And it's not the problem with the legislation, it's the problem with the interpretation at council level to some degree. Now, what ACT plans to do is, it's quite simple really. Councils are reluctant to enter into new builds. Doesn't matter if it's with a marae or with residential housing or commercial. They're reluctant to do that because they don't have the resources to put the infrastructure in. So what ACT proposes to do, I saw somebody actually sort of preparing to actually say something, I'm glad you held on to it. What ACT is wanting to do is share the GST take with council so they can put the infrastructure in, they can actually sort of gear the project. We're also looking at an equivalence when it comes to building materials. So we'll discuss that with MB and actually sort of look at having a register in place that doesn't cost the world. It's about affordability at the end of the day. So, party vote ACT.
Firstly, I would absolutely support a marae being built here. I think it'd be fantastic for the community, and add, another strand of pride to the community. I think it's certainly valuable. Would repeal the RMA and cut the red tape, and look forward to seeing that happen.
Very good question. We only passed the RMA something like 4 weeks ago, so it's very hard to measure the effectiveness or to say it's a dog's bollocks already. What's important actually is that we come back to what we're talking about here, is how do we enable our three marae in this community to flourish. Hato Pētera, Awataha marae, and Uruamo down here, because we don't need to be bound by one. And over here, you know, Dan had one term, he didn't support things Māori, and we had no action around marae in this community. At the start of this year, with a number of people, and Danielle, Cindy, I do acknowledge you, together, we stood up our flood response for the Kaipātiki community and at broader North Shore. Boots on the ground for days on end, for 15 hours a day to serve this community. If you're telling me that that marae is closed, which since then, day by day, and every Sunday they look after 200 whānau from the North Shore community, cross cultures, then you're actually, you are stirring, Dan, and that's unfair on that marae. I talk up this community. I talk up our maraes. I talk up our local public schools. I talk up our hospitals and health system. And that doesn't mean places have challenges, but the difference in this election and between your local MPs moving forward is actually who's going to get stuff done for you. Who's the person with the boots on the ground with measurable outcomes? Who brought TPK Te Puni to actually put Māori resources in this community? It was under this term.
So, next question. In our community, we are seeing a big increase in the number of dwellings, so naturally the population in the area is increasing substantially. So in the Beachhaven, Birkdale area, we only have a couple of GPs. We know that relationship with the local family doctor is important, and we don't want those who are unwell overloading the local hospital system. But the issue is we don't have enough GPs in the area. So what is each group looking at? Increasing the number of GPs in our area. Can we start with Calvin, because he's got to shoot off at 8. Is that all right, Calvin?
I think everyone knows that it takes 6 years to train a GP from start to finish. We haven't been in government for 6 years. How long, sir? 11 years. Okay, well that's even more interesting, because right now we should be seeing those people who started 11 years ago graduating, should have graduated this year, and who started before that graduating last year, and that they haven't been coming through. So anyone who says that the government hasn't been training doctors at a fast enough rate, we need to go back 11 years to what was happening then. Where were the people entering into med school 11 years ago so that they could have graduated this year or the year before? So it's really important to put that in perspective. That's really sad that they went overseas and didn't start training and emerge now. So I don't know what was happening 11 years ago, but it does need to change, and we are investing in more doctors, more nurses, more medical people.
Good night. Safe travels, and thanks very much.
All right, so here's the deal, ladies and gentlemen. We are 1,700 doctors short in this country. In our own community, if you go to a GP, they'll put you on a wait list. And normally it's weeks before you get seen. Okay? Well, many there are, okay? So what do we need to do? We need to train more doctors. So National's policy is clear to up the placements in the 2 medical schools that we already have, Auckland and Dunedin, and to build a 3rd medical school in Waikato focused solely on providing doctors for rural communities, because we know that is also a really big need as well. We're over 4,000 nurses short, and a lot of them are going overseas. So National's policy is clear. Every year that a nurse stays in New Zealand, will pay about $4,500 off their student loan. It's not going to change their life, but it's a start. We've got to turn things around. It's not going to, I agree with Calvin, it's not going to take 1 year or 2 years, but we've got to actually put the policies in place to lift our healthcare system up so that we can all get the healthcare that we deserve in years to come. Thank you.
Yeah, we did have two. I don't know what happened. As a GP, I can say that this really is a serious issue. Health is definitely in crisis. General practice is in crisis. There are surveys that suggest that 50% of GPs want to retire in the next 10 years. There's major burnout happening in the profession. I think from memory, something like 30% of practices have closed their books, so there is a real issue in terms of an availability of GPs, I think for about 400,000 potential patients across the nation. This is serious. In terms of what we do about it, I think it needs multi-prong approach. It definitely does need the approach of training up more doctors. We need to work on our retention of our doctors. Definitely doctors are going overseas. It's very difficult to actually maintain the stress at the moment under the reality of what it means to work as a doctor at the moment. Population growth is an issue. Auckland's particularly an issue because all of the infrastructure reality of our population growth here is we're not keeping up with it, with the development of health services. So all of these areas apply. We do need more doctors. We need better pay. GP is teetering on unsustainability at the moment, has been clearly messaging that for some time. In terms of what New Zealand First is going to do about it, we definitely have the intention to invest into primary care, into hospital medicine as well, deal with these waiting lists. Some patients have been waiting for 1 year, even 3 years. I was astonished to see. So we want to be able to do that, but we're aware also at the debt that we're in as a nation at the moment. So Winston Peters is messaging that we need to be looking seriously about the budget realities first before we can make specific promises in this area. But as a GP, I've very much wanted us to develop policy in this area, and I'm hoping that we are imminently about to do so.
I'm not going to stand here and argue with the doctor. She's at ground zero. She's telling you what the lay of the land is. I can actually say I'm astonished to actually hear Calvin Davies actually sort of say that it takes 11 years and that we're running short because of that. Successive governments, in his opinion. It's not that at all. Last time I was at university or on campus, med school is actually still full. People are actually lining up for these courses. But as Michelle said, I should call her Dr. Michelle said, people are leaving the country because they can't afford to live here anymore. They can't service their loans. It's true, it's a reality, people. If it wasn't that way, then people would be setting roots down here and staying here, closer to family. But that's not what's happening today. So we're looking at bringing in doctors from similar jurisdictions to ease the congestions. Our hospitals are actually full, and I'll give you an example. Last term, my son had, at his school, there was an outbreak of strep throat. Now, I contacted our family doctor, and I couldn't get him for 2 months. So I had to actually, I was redirected to White Cross. So we went to White Cross. We sat in that surgery for 7 hours. I had 2 little ones with me. I thought I'd get the other one tested because we're all in the same environment, a household. But 7 hours is unacceptable, people. And I'm actually saying we deserve better. You deserve better. Your buck needs to go a little bit further. Thank you. Party Vote Act.
I mean, it's clear over the years that there's probably been underinvestment in this part. So we would obviously, I mean, we're probably all in agreement with that. They would invest more in training and development. But I think even some common sense, practical things of making it something that kids want to do. Actually, my daughter, who's 6, wants to be a doctor. She already knows that, and that's something that we're encouraging, but maybe we're not encouraging it enough yet in primary schools, intermediate, and senior schools. That's maybe something we can have a look at. Unfortunately, 19,000 nurses have left the profession in the last 5 years, and there's hundreds that have mandated out. So one quick boost we would do is to remove all health mandates. My sister-in-law is mandated out. So GPs, there's hundreds of GPs and nurses. They would come back to the profession straight away. We would end that mandate and get them back into work because we need them.
A shout out to Beach Haven's most favourite GP, Ihipeta, painting wonderful woman that serves this community. I'm proud to be a government that has made visits to the GP cheaper for families in this community. We need to continue to invest in health access, health equity, and those are, of course, the priorities of the government that I have been a part of. I was at a meeting the other night and they talked about a statistic that said that we had 5,000 additional nurses under this government and 2,000 doctors over the past 6 years. So while we acknowledge, yes, we do have some workforce challenges in place, we are growing and producing a number of doctors and nurses of the quality that we're wanting them to be in, because quality is important too while we push out the numbers. On National's plan to build a medical training centre in Waikato, that's fine, but it's actually going to take them 7 years to get that up and running. I was at the University of Auckland last week, opening a facility there with the Prime Minister, and the Vice-Chancellor was saying, we can go now. We can start training people as of next year. Similarly with Otago University, we're able to do that as well. We know that we have workforce challenges, but we've got to maintain the investment that this government has put into health. I'm worried that that's at risk at the moment, and that cuts will come in place where we will have to make decisions about what we need to cut in there. Lastly, here in Birkdale Beach Haven, I would like to see an extension of whānau order for Te Puna Hauora to come down here and re-establish their Birkdale clinic, as well as the Whono, which is a Pacific health-based service that is currently based in Northcote, to be able to better serve the Beach Haven community as well.
Thank you, team. Okay, next question. I grew up when you did the crime, you did the time. But now in our sentencing courts, those guilty of crime seem to get a range of discounts. So from a 6-year sentence, it can get whittled down to a couple of years. It seems we're saying to those who are guilty, they're also victims of these circumstances. I don't deny there is truth in this. We used to have a community constable here based in Beach Haven, Grant, and all the locals knew him. You saw his presence, and he dealt with all the youth and the families, but that's going back a few years now. But a lot can be said about the type of relationship with the police and the community. I know there's no quick solution to crime and justice, but a lot of people in our community do not feel safe. So candidates, have we got things wrong, or how is your party planning to attack the issues of crime and justice? Thank you.
Great question. And I echo that many don't feel safe in their own homes, streets, businesses, or anywhere in our community. Since 2017, reported crime is up 50%. Yeah, come on. Since 2017, serious crime in our community is up 33%. As this man alluded to, there's a death in Beach Haven. There's a death a killing up in Albany. Okay, so this is a serious issue for our community. And National makes no apologies for taking a tougher approach to those that commit offences. So we will restore consequences for those that break the law. That means you do the crime, you do the time, exactly what Stephen said. National's policy around the sentencing is very clear. We will limit the amount that judges can deduct from a prisoner's sentence or a criminal sentence, so they in fact do the time as well. But there's other things we've got to do, of course, and that's why we've talked about military academies. Youth crime is a serious issue in our communities. Military academies are based off a great concept in Whenuapai called the Limited Service Volunteer Program. We want to expand that and actually make it a really successful program so that kids have an option out of their circumstances in life. And finally, we want to actually power up community organisations that do great work with serious repeat youth offenders. Community organisations like Genesis Youth Trust that takes at-risk kids and provides wraparound support services. And under the last national government, we invested in enterprises like that through the Social Investment Fund. We will bring that back so that every kid has the opportunity to get ahead.
New Zealand First wants to see a tougher approach to crime as well, so I double down on that on behalf of New Zealand First. A couple of examples of that are that we want to take seriously gang-related activity as a source of organised crime, so we want to see the Terrorism Suppression Act used to enable police to have more powers to actually intervene with gang activity. Another example is that we want to see a 6-month mandatory sentence applied for assault on a first responder, like an ambulance officer or a police officer. I'm just going to mention before Labour tries to claim this, New Zealand First does have quite a history on trying to implement a tougher approach to crime with respect to 1,800 police that were added in through a New Zealand First policy in the past. So we do take this seriously. At a personal level, I do think that it needs to have a multi-pronged approach in terms of looking into cause as well. But New Zealand First is looking at the stronger implementation of consequence side of that coin.
Okay, I'm going to actually sort of slow things down a bit and sort of respond to the comment about the judiciary being soft. I practiced in the criminal justice system. I was a lawyer, I worked in the district courts. Our judges do a fantastic job. If there's any fault to lay, it's with the politicians, not with the judges. So let me just get that straight. Now, I just want to point out to all of you that in 2016, there were approximately 4,270 something fully patched gang members in New Zealand. Now you fast forward to 2022, February, and that number had almost doubled. So, and those are just the people that we know are full patch members. We're not talking about associates, or we're not talking about sort of people that are connected to the gangs. So I say, if you do the crime, you get a harder sentence. Yes, I'm all for that. I think that we need to review the electronic monitoring that we actually sort of put on people that are actually sort of convicted. Home detention is a joke. Look what happened in Queen Street. We had somebody go out and actually kill multiple people. That could have been avoided. Again, the fault lies with the politicians, with nobody else. If you want to feel safe in your communities, then we need to actually sort of lock down. We need to actually start looking at alternatives. As far as youth are concerned, we're not a hard bash them out of the cricket grounds. We actually look at changing behaviour. It's all about changed behaviour. So you may have heard that we're actually looking at an infringement system. That's an instant fine. That goes to them or their family. Changes their way of looking at the world. We're also looking at community placements. Maybe by rehoning their skills, they can actually change the way they look at the world. It's all about upskilling and actually giving them resources. So again, I'm going to keep on saying this, Party Vote Act.
Yeah, I mean, it's obvious that crime is up and we have some real issues. Do we want to be harder on crime? In some cases, I think we have to be a bit more accountable, but where I operate, I guess, as I talked about even in the youth space, the one gap I see is, although we work hard with the young people, we probably don't keep accountable or have the right structure or supports in place for the parents and the families of what's actually happening in the home. If a young person is out there committing crime, something's happened at home. So for the young person to just be the one that gets all the time or everything, is given the heavy hand without having to look at, okay, what's happening at home, not to judge, but how can we support, what do we need to sort out, what can be healed, what can be strengthened. We've got to help at the home too. In terms of the judges, I mean, I work in the bail houses, and some of the guys I'm working with are on bail, and are probably looking at, from what I understand, 15 to 20 years, probably shouldn't be in the bail house for that extreme sort of level. But I do think some of the lower level ones do need to be in bail, because you know what? I don't know, of all the men I've worked with, I don't know how many were helped by being in prison. It doesn't mean that if people are doing serious offending that they shouldn't be in prison. particularly around gang activity. But I am saying we've got to address the underlying issues. And I'm hearing it with these guys that have been in cycles of 20, 30 years of crime. All came back to when my parents got divorced when I was 11, when I was sexually abused when I was 5. It doesn't justify the crime, but I'm saying we've got to at some point break the generational curse of this stuff because it's been going on for too long. And for some people who you wonder why, how can they do some of the stuff out there, they don't care about the community at times because the ones that were supposed to hurt them the most. And so we've got to heal them if we're going to do that, if we're going to get some change. Mark Dawson.
I've been concerned about the criminal activity and have heard concerns from our community. It's been me that's been on the ground when trouble, through good times and in bad actually. But again, I come back to who's actually going to generate results for this community. And I have a focus on prevention, protection and responsibility. And when we think about addressing actually the challenge in front of us, we've got to go through that process. And for us, we look at our overall crime profile, and we've had risen anxiety around ram raids and smash and grabs. That's made us all very concerned, and we're responding to that. But actually, at the other end, one of our biggest challenges in the North Shore community, shamefully, is domestic and family violence. But we don't talk about it in the same way that we talk about ram raids. But I come back to actually, and it started with this. We did have a police station here in Beach Haven that was closed under the national government because they drove down the resources of our police services. Since that's right, under the national government. Since that time, we've worked hard to build up resources. In one term with New Zealand First, I graciously acknowledge that we increased police on the beat for this community. That's about 16% or just over 100 across our district. What that's enabled us to do is to expand our team of community constables to work across the Kaipātiki, and similarly we've increased those numbers across the Takapuna local board as well. But lastly, and one of the most important resources that I've brought in under my time is the investment in our young people here and the investment in re-establishing our localised attendance and engagement service to address the truancy challenges that we've had since COVID. So we can all talk big on crime, but actually who's going to do the work and bring the resources to address the drivers of crime in the first place?
Okay, then just to Shannon, since you got the mic there, just a quick fire question. If you're driving out in the country there and you've seen a car had broken down and that was Dan, would you pick him up? Yes. Good. Nice. Okay. Right. Now we know the cost of living is affecting everybody. Increase in rent and the mortgage, the electricity and the fuel. And these costs, these core costs are just leaving nothing left in the breadbasket. And a lot more people going to food banks. There's been a big increase in there. But I do like to say that there is a lot of groups in our community, which is awesome, who support those families and supply meals and that there. So it's really great to see that community spirit. So I love that. But what will your parties do to relieve some of these costs if elected? So we'll start with Michelle.
New Zealand First is centrist, so we have the overall perspective, I would say, on the right and on the left. On the right and on the left. What that means in practice is that we can see that we need to reboost the economy. So we need to invest into business. We need to give tax incentives to lift up productivity of business because that's the engine room to get the thing running again. At the same time, we want to look after our people, so we want to be able to lift up wages. We want to be able to tax inflation, adjust tax brackets as well. In addition, we do stand behind our policy, which actually was originally our policy as well, which is GST off basic foods. So we're still standing behind that as well. Thank you.
Well, the cost of living, it's all on our lips. It's something that's hitting all of us. Doesn't matter where you come from in society. Where do I start? The price of food, the price of petrol, the price of transportation, the price of electricity, it's hitting us all in the pocket. Now, under ACT, we're proposing to overhaul the tax system from a 5-bracket system to a nice and simple 2-bracket system. Now, that 2-bracket system is 17.5% for anything up to 78,000. From 78,000 on, we're looking at 28%. Now, that will give every family the ability to put money in their back pocket. No longer will it be going down to Wellington. In fact, I'll actually start the conversation over again. Inflation is up because of inflationary spending by this government. Let's say it how we see it. This government over the last 5 years, and I said it last night, this government over the last 5 years has actually spent $129 billion, yes, billion dollars on operational costs. That doesn't include any other additional costs that are going into the fray. Businesses are struggling. I don't know if you've looked at it, but a lot of the businesses in the area are actually closing. Well, yes. So I suppose what I'm trying to say to you all is that we're trying to ease the pressures on families. We're trying to actually relax those pressures on families. As far as housing is concerned, you heard me say that we're going to look at a register for equivalent supplies, building supplies with MB. We're also going to actually sort of split the GST with local governments so they can actually put the infrastructure in. That will bring the cost of housing down. With rents, we're actually looking at reversing, bringing back interest deductibility. That will allow landlords to actually soften the cost to tenants. So, there's a lot of people that... all I can say is, party vote ACT, everyone.
See this up? Did you not hear what I said earlier on? Well, you know, I'll say it again. Sit there, shut up, listen, then we can all go home. I love you.
This is fun. All right. First thing that we would do is we'd make the first 25,000 tax-free. Second thing we'd do is we'd have zero tax on student loans, superannuation, and benefits. The other thing, obviously, what we would love to increase your wages or minimum wages. Often what happens is that cost is, although it's legislated, the cost comes back to the small and medium businesses to carry. And so one of the things that we would love to do is actually to have a look at cutting down the costs that businesses, the compliances and everything else, that red tape and all the bureaucracy that actually really floods our businesses, to cut that cost down so they can afford to increase the wages is the other thing. And absolutely review the government spending. And all the money that's borrowed comes with high interest. And so we've got so much that needs to be reviewed. 1 in 5 work for the government. From country of this size, that's a whole lot too many people that are looking after us. Now I know through social services, I know, well, they should be focused on the infrastructure and the resource, not telling us how to be parents for one thing. Now I'm in social service, so I understand most of the money that comes from social service, and I mean this with respect, does not get down onto the ground with the people that need it. Most of that money goes to pay salaries of good, awesome people, but most of the money actually goes to the salaries. No. I've been in it for 18 years. Most of the money goes to there. Now, there's wonderful people in there, and I'm one of them. I got a team. But not always the money is not getting to where it matters most to help ease the pressure. Yes, we do food packages, and yes, we help with courses, and we take them to places, and we do mentoring, we do all that stuff. But those who need it the most are not actually getting the money. We've got to review the government spending, cut that down, so that we can afford to lift the wages.
quite often people talk about inflation, and inflation isn't just a Beach Haven Birkdale issue, it's a global issue that has impacted the whole of the world. The reality is that our inflation rates are coming down, and I guess the question for both our party and future parties is who's going to bring it down the fastest, because at the moment the projection is it will be below 3 at about 12 months' time. And so challenge candidates about it. Can you accelerate that, of course? But the cost of living plan put forward by Chris Hipkins and Labour actually stacks up. It's been costed out. Things like removing GST off the price of fresh fruit and vegetables. On top of that, we're actually doing work to ensure that we're paying the fair price at our local supermarkets, because supermarkets have been making $1 million a day profit over and above their projected forecasts. We're going to put basic dental care free for under 30s as a start and a step towards universal. We're going to continue to increase the minimum wage that National did not support year in, year out while I was in Parliament. I am concerned that they will freeze the increase of minimum wage. On top of that, what we saw from National today was sanctioning of benefits. And actually, everyone in this community needs a go. We need to continue to invest in families so that they can do well, so that they can keep up with the cost of living. While inflation comes down, we've got to respond properly. We've got to make sure that our fiscals add up. Currently, they don't in National. And the question will become, where will those cuts come from? Will they be in our housing? Will they be in our hospitals? Will they be in our police numbers? Ask those questions, because the money from National has to come from somewhere.
So there's absolutely a lot of people hurting out there with the cost of living. The Treasury and the Reserve Bank both say that about 50% of inflation is domestic driven. Food inflation, 13%. Okay, so what's National's plan? First step is to give you tax relief. And I'd encourage you to go onto our tax calculator. Yep. Because you've worked hard for your money and you will spend it far better than this government will. Okay, second thing is that we won't pile on the petrol taxes. We're going to take off the Auckland regional fuel tax, because that money is not being spent and it is better be spent in your back pocket. The third is to end the culture of waste in Wellington. How much was spent? Yes. How much was spent on the cycleway? How much was spent on the cycleway across the harbour that we never saw? $51 million of your money. Okay, so those things are gone. We're going to get the books in order under a National-led government. And lastly, can I just talk about childcare? Because childcare is actually one of the highest costs. And what we're going to do is offer you up to $75 a week to actually provide childcare for your family. So under a National-led government, we'll get the economy moving, we'll ease cost of living pressures, and we'll rise your incomes as a result. Thank you.
Okay. I'll ask that question of Dan. Would you pick up Shannon if he broken down?
I would. I even put my hand out to shake his hand, and unfortunately he didn't. But I would definitely pick him up.
Sure.
Thank you.
Now, I listened to Fran O'Sullivan last week, and she had some stern words for the media. And she asked, why is the media so scared to air differences in views in society about co-governance, gender, and a list of other topics? Why do they slam people and cancel and label people in society who talk about these subjects? She called it an evil and said she should smoke it out and move on. And I agree. So we have a lot of people here in the hall tonight, and we all have lots of different opinions, but we're all one community. But what is the candidate's view on this subject? Well, basically, it's a question on the media cancelling people and labelling people when they talk about subjects like gender or co-governance. They...
Yeah, got the gist.
Yep. I think candidates know what I'm talking about.
Okay, well, ACT stands for freedom of speech. It concerns me a great deal with this woke mentality that actually is invading our society. It also concerns me a great deal about the gender issues that are actually being introduced into our schools. I say go back to basics. Listen, I'm all for an open society. I'm more reflective than you think. I've got Pākehā, I've got Europe, I've got French in me, I've got Māori in me, I've got Pacifica in me. Well, the media has a way of actually focusing on certain subjects, certain topics that actually sort of make for good news. I think it's all a bunch of mirrors and smoke to deflect what you need to focus in on, and that's your family values and your freedoms. This has actually been dwindled. I actually said on the podium a short time ago, if we don't have a democracy that's actually open and transparent and accountable, then this is going to affect all of us. So forget about what the media is actually sort of doing. At the end of the day, it comes down to how strong you feel standing up and actually sort of protecting these values. I do, and that's why I'm standing. So I won't have to say it again. I'd like the people in the audience to actually say what I always say. That's it. You're learning. Thank you.
I mean, we absolutely stand for freedom of speech. I mean, gee, our grandparents fought in World War II for freedom, so what would it be now to let that disappear? I do think sometimes the media just gaslights things for clickbait and division, and I think sometimes even a lot of the news media, I mean, this obviously isn't policy, we don't have policy for this, but just me saying, I think sometimes they really don't consider how they wreck lives with some of the stories they put out there. And there's certainly obviously not a good enough stories. There's so many amazing things that are happening that's never reported. We just hear all the bad, and they're ready to gaslight and wreck somebody's life. So, but I think media needs to be a lot more accountable, and they do need to print the views of everybody. Free society, and be able to, the differing views is certainly very important. Thank you.
I think the media plays a very important role in politics, actually. I think hearing what they have to say is important, but it's also important that we build out media to ensure that all voices are represented in the discussion. But what is more important, actually, is that everyone feels safe and protected in the discussions that are being had within freedom of speech, because everyone wants to speak openly and honestly. But actually, some of the reality is some of the things that people say are harmful and hurtful. I was really proud to be able to shepherd through changing legislation to ban conversion practices in this country, where we wondered whether they were a thing that happened to actually, it certainly was something that happened. They damaged young people and impacted on people's mental health, and so I'm really proud of legislation on that. But there's parties here that didn't support that legislation through first and second reading and turned it into politics. And so that's an example actually where we start to harm people, and the media reports that as well. The second one around co-governance, my dad is Māori, my mum is blonde blue-eyed European woman. I actually wish that we could openly and honestly talk about co-governance collectively without having the hate involved in it and the heat in it. Because there's an opportunity for us to build a beautiful country where cultures are accepted, that aren't against each other, and where we learn from each other, because at the centre of it is inclusion, and I think that we can do that.
I'm a strong believer in freedom of speech, and I'm a strong believer that freedom of speech is a key tenet to a liberal democracy. I might not like what you say, but I defend your right to say it, right? That's what it comes down to. And those conversations might be difficult, and it may be I am offended by what you just said, but I defend your right to say it. On the second issue, I believe in a one person, one vote view of democracy. Where we are all treated as equal Kiwi citizens under the eyes of the law, and we have all equal access to government services in this country. So too does National, and that's why I'm urging you to party vote National. Thank you.
Ihoa! Shush! 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 Hey! My God. Okay. Now, hang on a minute. Did you just hear that? You see? That's what I'm talking about. You know, they can't sit there and listen. They can go as, no, shush! I've got the floor. Excuse me. Stop talking. I've got the floor. Right? I've got the floor. Now, if you're going to carry on, if you guys are going to carry on, you know, go home. Be quiet. Go home. Now. I don't want to be here listening to you prattle on all night. My God's sake. You'll have your chance on the 14th of October. Make sure you use it. Thank you for coming. I love your work. And let's carry on. Let's just carry on. Come on, come on, come on. Come on. Oh, excuse me. Do you want to go home too? Please, come on. Give me a break here. Well, I'm being fair. If you want to carry on and pussyfoot around, you must just go home. I'm not here to listen to you. I'm here to listen to these people here, not you. All right? That's why I came here tonight, to listen to these people on the stage. That's why you've come here to listen to these people on the stage. And me. All right? And let's give us a fair go. Come on. Well,
only one vote per person. I just wonder if, in the name of freedom of speech, if Dan could tell us where there's example where we don't have one vote per person.
Come on, let's move on.
The answer is co-governance. The answer is co-governance, which gives iwi leaders the ability to influence. Three. Sorry.
They can't name an example.
Is this working? Yes, it is. Okay, let me start again. The answer is co-governance. The reason co-governance is the answer is because it gives local iwi leaders authority of influence without having a vote accountability structure around that authority. The leaders are not voted for. The individuals in the society cannot influence that leader's decision making. It's up to the leader. Therefore, they have a separate framework from our one vote, one person. That's the answer. And that's why. And this, and this, and this, and this. I'm the one with the microphone. Can I continue? I can continue.
I'm sorry, your time is up.
But My time's been used.
So I might get her to bring them up. It is only 8:30, so I don't want to keep people too long tonight. So talking about the economy, if you're in government and need to reduce the government spending, what services would you first choose to cut and why? We'll start with...
You hear me? I think firstly, we'd obviously have to have a thorough review. I had dinner with a man here the other day, and it's bipartisan. He's been in the transport engineering industry for the last 30 years, and he said they've been talking for 35 plus years about a second crossing since back then. And he said they've been working on different options to present, and he had worked overseas, and normally there would be 3-4 options, and then you pick from that option. He said by the time John Key came in, they had 152 options for him. Then John Key came in and cut it down to 3. They gave him the 3, and then they said, well, actually that one didn't work either because there's a gradient for the train to go in the tunnel. What I'm saying is, and this is what this man was telling me, he's retired now. In his experience, there were so many that their end purpose was not actually to build the crossing. Their end purpose was as consultants just to keep finding a way to make money. And I think we've got a real problem deep down where there's a whole lot of money that has been taken in terms of consultancy, extra compliance that's unnecessary. In social services, the amount of paperwork now in childcare is just ridiculous. It's 3 times what I had when I first started. I think there's a lot that we can cut to save and actually just allow people to do their jobs even better. Thank you.
This is a really good question because this election is about who's going to cut what. I've worked really hard to build up good public services that you asked me to do in this community. Police numbers, hospital beds, houses, truancy services, the schools and classrooms. Those are the things that this community asked for, and it was quite common that people felt that the North Shore actually didn't get a fair share from Wellington. What we've done is to ensure that resources actually come to this community. I'm committed to that. Under Grant Robertson, he's made the cuts that he's needed to. He's pulled back. I think it's something like 3.5%. But that is it. I'm not going to see any dollars taken away from this community. My commitment is actually to build on it because we have to get on top of the challenges we talked about tonight. We've actually got to invest in them. Things like addressing congestion and reducing emissions with the additional harbour crossing that we should have done 50 years ago. Things like building the classrooms at Beach Haven Primary. We've got to get on and do that. These are the things that become at risk if we need to cut back on government spending.
So the question, Stephen, was what would you cut? Excellent. So look, I've made most of my life as a consultant by profession. My wife has also been a consultant. So both of us have seen the waste of consultant spend in Wellington for ourselves on the other opposite side. So that's actually the first area where we would cut, that consultant spend by about $1 billion per annum. If you break down the $51 million that this government spent on the failed cycle bridge across our bridge, most of that money is actually consultants. It's lawyers, engineers, project managers, project management consultants. It's those types of things that we will look at cutting because that's where we can reprioritise and get more projects out there. There you go. So that's, I hope, addresses your question.
New Zealand First also is very aware of the bureaucracy and the resource that's being wasted on bureaucracy in Parliament, so we would definitely cut that as well. And this is going to cause a stir. We would also cut ideologically motivated investments, for example, in health, and we would redirect to the single health system, all Kiwis, equal needs. I thought I'd get more reaction than that, and party vote New Zealand first.
Well done. Okay. Sorry, Stephen, I've forgotten the question. That makes sense. Despite what you may have heard in the newspapers, we're not all hatchet men up here. You know, ACT is going to actually maintain the core services. A question was put to me last night by the Pacifica community, and I actually answered it as honestly as I could. The question was, will you cut the ministry for Pacific peoples? And I said, yes. Because I tell you what, I'll tell you that. I said, the reason why we'd cut it is because the money that's going into that bureaucracy, that bureaucratic process, is just not getting down to ground roots. You've heard it actually sort of said across this side of the panel. It's not getting down to where it's needed. It's actually being gobbled up by bureaucrats in Wellington. That needs to stop. Don't worry about what they told me. If you believe what's in the newspapers, it's actually in black and white. So this is how we're going to look at it. We're going to actually hold CEOs of government departments accountable. If they don't meet their targets and if they don't meet their KPIs, then they're going to have some hard discussions, some courageous discussions, because that is not good enough. So that's where I'll leave it. I think that this bunch is starting to turn a bit lively behind me, so party vote ACT.
Show of hands from you guys. If any of you jumped off the Beachhaven Wharf? If any of you jumped off the Beachhaven Wharf? Have you? But just show of hands. No, yes. Yeah. All right. And just a quick question and go around is, what is your favourite public place in Beachhaven? Have you got a favourite place in Beachhaven?
The Birkdale Beachhaven Community House. Special place.
I am a big fan of the French Cafe down there. They make great coffee. I highly recommend it. Tanya and Chris, shout out to them. They do great work.
For me, it is the wharf in the coastal area. I love the outdoors.
Okay, for me, just quickly, I spend a lot of my time when I've got it sort of out on the boat, so I like to actually spend that fishing off Island Bay. So that's me.
Well, you said at the wharf, we've run a couple of bombing comps with the young fellas out there, and it's been pretty fun, so they'll be mine.
Okay, there was a question there from one of the public as they come in to the candidates. What is your carbon emissions target for the next 3 years if you're in government?
Okay, excellent. So National's committed to the NDC 2030 targets and the 2050 targets set out in the Paris Agreement. So those are that. My own personal carbon emissions, so I and my wife and I both drive an electric vehicle. We've decarbonised our home. We eat less red meat. We also offset our emissions when we fly. So we are in fact carbon neutral, and that's how it's going to be in the next 3 years for us personally. Thank you.
New Zealand First has a pragmatic approach to emissions. We are aware on the one hand that our total emissions as a nation amount to, from my understanding, 0.17% of the world's emissions. So what that means in practice is even if we do all of these goals to actually reduce our emissions, we won't actually really have a tangible impact on the world or on our own climate. So we're aware on the one hand that that's the practical reality. On the other hand, we are also aware that we should still be the responsible stewards of our resources, so we have a balanced perspective on that. From the agricultural point of view, what we want to do is monitor emissions, but we don't want to punish our farmers for emissions. We want to be open to the possibility of solutions provided by science to reduce emissions. So we have a middle-of-the-road approach to this. At a personal level, My personal approach to this actually has been reflecting on the fact I have one physical child, and that's been my personal contribution.
Okay, carbon emissions. Well, ACT has a policy on that. First thing we're going to cut, if we're talking about cuts, is the Clean Carbon Act and the Climate Change Commission. These are bureaucratic processes that cost you money, and in a cost of living sort of issue, these are hitting you in the back pocket. So we're going to actually we're going to reduce that where we can. Now, that's not to say that we don't believe in it. We don't want to actually penalise New Zealanders. We don't want to actually sort of hit you when we're actually simple answer to that is, just look at where we stand in the world. Most of you that have electric cars, a lot of those products, a lot of those materials that are actually used in those electric vehicles are actually sourced in what you'd call developing countries. They are. China actually deals predominantly with the lithium manufacture and the battery manufacture. Russia actually deals with the cobalt. So when we start talking about that, I think we need to actually place ourselves square and centre within the same sort of space as our OECD partners. Why should we actually be at the front of the charge when all our other OECD countries are actually still producing? So again, I know that's a touchy subject, but yeah, that's all I'll say on it.
Yeah, you're gonna love this one. I'll be real popular in a minute. With our Freedoms New Zealand umbrella, we would repeal the Zero Carbon Act. We'll remove methane emissions from livestock from all climate change calculations. We'll cancel the emissions trading scheme. We believe selling carbon credits has no impact on other polluters. They continue to pollute. We believe we're already carbon negative. However, our biggest stores of carbon and native forest are excluded from our carbon calculations. We'll ensure pasture and crops are excluded from our current carbon calculations. We'll remove the office and powers of the Minister for Climate Change, and we'll develop our own climate change policy that encourages reduction of real measurable emissions. Party vote, Freedoms New Zealand.
But under our government, we have worked on the emissions reduction plan, and what that says to us is that actually what we're doing now is working. We've seen consecutively year after year a reduction in our emissions in this country. Again, we have a big environmental lens across this community. People actually appreciate our local environment. But the one thing actually that we can do better on, even though we are high performers in this area, is to address the way that we get in and around how we go to work through better transport options. That's why public transport is significantly important to a growing community like ours. We need to enable more frequency, more electric buses, to enable and more affordable public transport for people to use as alternative to their cars, so that people who need cars can actually use them. Now, I've got on and ensured that we continue to have half-price public transport for under 24s to address congestion on Onewa Road by making it free for under 13s, because a certain amount of our congestion that we experience on that road is because of the number of schools that we have during peak time. So we need to offer alternative solutions. Our transport fleet makes up a third of the emissions in this country. So the challenge for us is, how can we change our behaviour to use better public transport when we can? Two, take on electric vehicles, and I acknowledge Dan for having 2 electric vehicles, and probably at least one of them had the government's rebate in it that they're going to axe. But what's important, but you took it, but it's important that actually we continue the work that we're doing. And lastly, down at Chelsea Sugar Factory, actually the $400 million investment in changing the energy, $400 million invested in Chelsea Sugar Factory to enable them to change the energy that they use so that they can also reduce emissions. That's an example of working with local business.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, someone's phone went off before. I think it was one of the Labor supporters down there. In it for you. It'll be $10 for the association. In it for us. Thank you. I'd like to probably just wrap up our meeting tonight. So I just want to say a big thank you to all the community for coming out tonight. It's good to see you all. A few niggles out there, but like Barry said, you know, we have to respect each other. We're all one community. We live together. We love this place. We love the environment, you know, and we look after each other. So big thank you to the candidates for standing for Northcote. All the best here. And I do like recognise Shannon during his term and also Dan in the previous term that they both supported our association and the local community event. So thank you too. Also a big thanks to the team tonight who helped put on tonight. Barry. So that's all. Yeah, it's not Barry Crump, but we call him Barry. We've got Duncan on the sound system. Thanks, Duncan. Elizabeth on the door, and Joe. Yeah, we haven't got too many associations, so not too many claps left. We've got Joe and Wayne and the car parking and setting up the chairs and everything today. And also Kate for putting all our social media out there for events. So thank you for coming tonight. I'm sure the candidates will probably hang around and mingle. So again, have early voting starts from next Monday, and the Maria Sumpter Church on Beachhaven Road. You can go there and early vote. So one vote next week or on the 14th. We will have a polling booth here on the 14th. So great. Good to see you all. God bless.